So here at Not Going to Uni, we love talking about Gen Z and helping employers engage with young talent in the right way. And of course, a natural part of that is talking about social media. And in particular, we're going to be talking about Instagram. Now, for all the talk about TikTok, Instagram still is a significant platform when it comes to Gen Z. And in the UK alone, there are 34 million users who are active on Instagram. When you think about the total population, that's a significant chunk. And when it comes to Gen Z, there's 43% are saying they use the app daily. And now that's an average. So imagine there will be a lot of people who are, very, very active users of Instagram that kind of fall in between those stats. So when it comes to Instagram, it's certainly something that cannot be ignored. So it's always worth looking at how employers can actually adapt what they're doing on Instagram. So, and when it comes to Instagram in comparison with other platforms, Instagram's pretty much punching very well, isn't it? In terms of how engaged Gen Z are in the platform.
Yeah, I mean, it ranks third amongst teens in terms of the time spent on there, behind platforms like TikTok, which we're going to discuss in another episode. I mean, the really interesting thing is actually how far ahead Instagram is compared to other platforms as well, such as Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, etc. It just shows it's still what I'd say is, one of the main daily drivers, should we say, of a young person's sort of social ecosystem, and one that's used for checking in quite regularly. Sometimes I think the difference, if someone said, what's the glaring difference? I think Instagram's more you can dive in and check in. TikTok's more you get in and you usually, it's designed to keep you in and make you stay in, right? Whereas I think Instagram you can dive in and out of more. Which will explain why it's lower than TikTok, but also explain whilst it's still high, because that ability to just quickly dive in, check your stories on there and dive back out is quite easy to do.
And actually, when it comes comparing to Facebook, Facebook's a lot lower down.
Yeah.
But actually, I think there is a danger sometimes of doing social media that's about maybe 10 years old.
Yeah.
And that's it's a bit dangerous to do, because the world moves a lot quicker than that. And actually, whereas there may be campaigns that still being run on Facebook, is if you're not really using Meta more for Instagram than Facebook, then I think you're certainly missing some great opportunities. And actually, these some of these stats that we talk about in terms of the comparison of usage across Instagram compared to other platforms is that is off the back of some Gallup research, and the article from Forbes was titled "Teens Spend More Time on Social Media Than Homework." Now, it's no new thing, I suppose, to hear about struggles of getting kids to do the homework. But actually, going back to what we talk about, say about TikTok, and we'll talk about when it comes to YouTube and also with Instagram, is that actually there's a big chance they'll be using social to actually learn as well. So actually, others may see it as being not doing homework, but actually they may well be using it to learn stuff as well. But yeah, more time on social media than homework, which is quite an eye-opener. But when it comes to what people are actually doing with their time on Instagram, what kind of things are they up to?
Yeah, so I think that the really interesting thing, and Data Reportal did a piece of research earlier this year on the sort of top 3 areas that are covered by a user. So 70% of users, 17.4% of Instagram users are posting content. That's photos and videos, which I wouldn't say surprising when you think the platform from the turn of time has been, obviously originally it was photos only, but was designed for you to be able to share a little outlook into what you're up to, but in a photo snapshot way, unlike Facebook, which has had the ability to do quite long bits of text, etc. The second was entertainment content. So going on there to, probably watch your favorite musician's latest video, for example, or, keep up to date with, you know, your football team's goal they've just scored and things like this. And that was 64.8%. The one that I think is really interesting, though, for brands who are looking to engage Gen Z and hire Gen Z is 62.7% of users say they use it to follow brands for research and learning more products. Now, I know there's that terminology there about, you know, B2C products and buy-in products, we'd assume, or utilizing products, we assume, but actually there's probably a strong correlation that would correlate with going and doing a bit of research on you as an employer as well, because it is a product in a weird way.
Well, there's, you know, I think, you know, your behavior as an individual doesn't change just all of a sudden moving over to, you know, over to looking for a job and researching careers. Is, you know, if you want to find advice and get some sort of direction, whether it's, you know, a product or a service, or it's what career do I go down, you know, I think it's still the same behavior applies, definitely. And actually, I've found it's really interesting, and Instagram has talked about this before, is about how popular it is, Instagram is, for actually conversations in direct message. So actually off the main feed. Yes, there are reels. Reels is you know, understandably being pushed a lot because Instagram want to make sure that they are competing against TikTok in terms of video content, and YouTube as well. But the direct messaging thing is really interesting, whereas a lot of the activity and the time spent on Instagram is through that direct messaging, which has actually resulted in them Instagram a few months ago, launching a new product, and that is broadcast channels, isn't it?
Yeah, so broadcast channels is the best way to describe it. Is it's a mass message you can subscribe to, almost like a mailing list, almost like being in a WhatsApp group, really.
Yeah.
You know, probably 5 years ago, you'd subscribe to a mailing list. I know you still can, and there's still a place for it, but it's the equivalent of doing that. You're subscribing to that page's mailing list via Instagram. And in your DMs on a daily, weekly, fortnightly, monthly basis, there will be information pushed out to you. So that, you know, from a careers perspective, if we're relating this to recruitment, could be information about work experience schemes, information about vacancies opening, schemes opening, you know, insight days, events, and much more. Or that they're going to, you know, go and do a Q&A, for example, on their channel or something like this. So it's a really nice way of tapping into that more sort of almost, I say it's one-to-one communication in a group in some ways, but it's a bit more personal. It's a bit more, it's in your DMs. It's away from the main thing. And it's a way of you pinging up as a notification for them as well.
It's true, yeah, very true. That, and I think you're absolutely right, because I think there's that thing about, and this is why, you know, direct messaging, you know, is popular, is because there is that feeling of it being more personal. It's like, yeah, you spend your time on the scroll, going through Instagram, whether it's reels or the main feed, looking at, you know, watching lives, but there's something kind of comfortable and comforting about then going into messages and spending a bit more time, or having a bit more kind of higher quality interactions with people. And so that's why broadcast channels were introduced on Instagram. We've been quite open about that, because they're reacting to the data that they see on the platform, you know, day in, day out. So when it comes to what employers should be doing, you know, what kind of tips and tricks should we talk about?
I think going and looking at what your big consumer brands are doing. I think as recruitment professionals, we don't often look at what consumer brands are doing really well from engaging with their audience to push product. When actually you can go and look at your, you know, all your big fast fashion brands, when you can look at your, you know, it's quite supermarket brands, when you can look at influencers, whether it's, you know, the Kardashians, or whether it's,
well, I mean, Kylie Jenner's like still up there, you know, near the top of the league.
Micro influencers as well, so maybe lesser known. We spoke about someone in the food space on TikTok when we were talking about Ollie Each, you know, people like that who maybe 10, 20,000, what are they pushing out? You know, sport teams, etc. as well. So it's really good to look at in those consumer-based spaces. What are they pushing out content-wise to engage their audience, and what looks like it's doing well? What does it look like they're repeating on there? Because there's method behind the madness. If you see that they're posting a certain type of content quite regularly, probably because it's working.
Exactly. And I think actually when you talk about sports, I think that's absolutely right, because I think particularly football, you look at over the years of what football clubs are doing, they kind of also become media companies as well.
Yeah.
You know, they're literally like, of course, fans want to feel as close to the players and the club as possible. Yes, that's in the stadium, but also this thing like behind the scenes footage of training, and you don't have to see it when an international football tournament comes along, and how England are literally, they have a media team that are following them now. It's not to say that employers should have a media team, although that would be a good idea and a good investment. But I think that shows that actually, and there's a similarity with organizations and employers, is giving people that feeling about what goes on in an organization. And then with that, tapping into the opinions and advice and the experiences of those people, so that actually people from the outside feel closer to that organization. So when they do think about applying for a job, or they do actually get invited to interview, it feels just a bit more natural, a bit more familiar, because there's that rapport that's being generated already, because they've got a feeling they understand the vibe. I think vibe is very important when it comes to the world of employment.
Instagram and TikTok and YouTube are platforms where you can get that across, that kind of vibe, because you can do that point of view, sometimes quite raw content, very user generated, and people expect to see that. So you can really show that on these platforms, and Instagram in particular, and it's the kind of content that people are used to seeing on their personal feeds on Instagram all the time, because it's people posting what they've got up to, what holidays they've been on, etc. So they're used to seeing that raw, homemade type content.
Exactly. I think it was in line with that as well. I think following from what you said, I think there's that thing about talking to your employees, and your younger employees, to find out what they do when it comes to Instagram, what they're creating themselves, but also what they're consuming, but also to actually use them as well, because the life @ and then insert company name is popular on Instagram for sure. And I think that's for good reason, because actually there is a great opportunity to really involve your employees in actually taking photos of themselves, doing videos, and finding those people that are going to be super engaged, probably because they're doing it already on Instagram. And so literally you've got your content creators to hand already. They just maybe need a bit of guidance, but also I think importantly, let them do what they think is best. You'll still have the safety of, looking at the content before it goes live. But let them be the experts, because they use it day in, day out.
100%. I think another really quick win, and we spoke about this in another video we've done, is, you're making TikToks, hopefully. That's something you're going to do, or you're making video content for TikTok. Usually the trends and the things happening on TikTok, usually the good ones, correlate to Instagram at some point, or will correlate to Instagram with maybe some slight tweaks. So should 100%, where needed and where it's possible, be almost duplicating your content across the platforms.
Often actually kind of cross-posting is frowned upon, but I think that's only because if it's not tweaked and adjusted for the platform. But ultimately, if you're, because you've got to draw the line somewhere, there's only so much that can be done. And it's better to do this than do nothing at all. And that is, if you're creating for TikTok, then adjust for Instagram as well, because that could be turned into Reels. But also then for YouTube and YouTube Shorts, which is YouTube's answer to, and we'll go into a bit more detail in another episode about this, but YouTube Shorts is YouTube's answer to TikTok and Instagram Reels. So I think there's nothing wrong in starting with that, because then you can see what will happen, how that content goes down, and then you can adjust. But at least it's a starting point to get you used to using it as an organization, as a team, more in a way that's more in line with what the users are doing on Instagram.
Definitely. definitely.
Great. Look, we've covered off more. I'm sure we could cover off a lot more as well. But yeah, thanks for that. It's been good to chat.
Really good.